about a year ago. I'll call him Johnny for the sake of just being discreet. But I was going to a college campus here, and we started to engage one of the college campuses pretty regularly with the gospel and broad seed sowing of the gospel. We would talk with a lot of people, and just so, for example, one day we went and probably shared with 15 or 20 different people. And so just walking around and starting conversations that lasted for 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes up to 30 minutes, but just talking person to person as those who would listen. Well, one day I was there and I had another young man that was with me and wanting to learn about sharing the gospel. And he has a stutter. And so he was actually really wanting to step out and share, but he was struggling even to just form the words. And so I said, hey, at least at first, why don't you just pray? You tell me who to talk to, and then we'll go and I'll show you how this works. And so he looked around, and immediately after I said that, he pointed to this couple halfway across this cafeteria that had, at least 500 people in it. And he said, that couple right there. So I said, all right, let's go. So we went over to them, started to engage them in some casual to meaningful to spiritual conversation. That's a way I coach people, is just those stages of conversation: casual, meaningful, spiritual. And as we got into it, the spiritual part with this couple, basically got into saying, like, what's your spiritual background? Where are you at? And she said, I'm Christian, but you should ask him. And so I asked him, and this is this guy, Johnny, and he was like, well, I mean, I don't know, I'm atheist, whatever. And she said, no, tell him. And he said, I actually told her last week that if all this stuff that she believes in is real, God would have to give me a sign. And I was like, okay, well, I'm telling you, this guy, he pointed you out of this whole crowd, of this whole room. He said, we got to go talk with that couple right there. And I was like, do you have a minute? He was like, all right. So I sat down with him and I shared the gospel with him. And I just went through simple tool that we use called the 3 circles. Maybe you've talked about that before on your podcast, Matt, but just use a simple tool called the 3 circles. Go through this tool and share with him the gospel of what Jesus has accomplished in his death, his burial, his resurrection, and get to the end of it and said, hey, where do you feel like you're at? And would you like to talk some more? And he was like, yeah, I'm definitely in this place of brokenness, and I don't know. And she said, the girlfriend was like, you should meet with him. And I was like, hey, bro, like, sounds like the girlfriend knows some things about Christianity. If you really want to get on our good side, I think you should learn some things too. And so he's like, okay, I'll meet with you. So we start to meet. And we meet week after week, and we start to go through some stories of hope from the Bible. And we're reading through these stories that are just little snapshots from the Gospels. And we get to I think it's about the 3rd story that we finally get to, that is the thieves on the cross, where Jesus is crucified with a guy on his left and a guy on his right. One guy mocks him and the other guy says, have you no fear of God? We deserve to be up here. He has done nothing wrong. And then he turns to Jesus and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And so Jesus turns to him and says, today you'll be with me in paradise. Johnny, he hears this and he's like, huh, so that's all he did? And I was like, that's all he did. He just prayed that prayer and turned to him. And he was like, so that's what this is? And I said, that's what this is. And he said, okay, I think I'm in. And so that was the beginning of this process for him of taking steps to follow. Now, this young man comes from a Hindu and Buddhist family. And so if you want to talk about holistic transformation, Matt, this was he within about a month was fully following Jesus, and he started to gather with us. And within a month and a half, 6 weeks or so, he got baptized. And so we baptized him in the bathtub during one of our church gatherings, and then began to give him some vision for reaching his friends, his family, and he began to share. He's a basketball player. He also had parents that are very strong Buddhist. He would tell us about some of the things that happened when he was a kid, and some of it was pretty dark. And won't go into too much detail, but there was abuse and there was some intense stuff that came through the religion from his parents to him. And so he starts to take steps in sharing with friends and family. And so, for one, he opened up his house. He let us come to meet his parents and begin to engage with him in some spiritual conversation with them and seeing the gospel go from his life to their life. And then he began to share with his friends as well. And he would always talk about telling them about God. That was his phrase. I'm going to tell them about God. And so he called me one day and he said, Mark, you have to come now. I need to tell Ryan about God and I don't know what to do. So I go and I meet up with him. I sit down and he's like, okay, he's here. Tell him about God. And I was like, no, you're going to tell him. And so I get out the same tool that I've already trained him in. And he shares with his friend Ryan what he had been learning about the gospel. And on the spot, Ryan's like, yep, I want to follow. And Ryan's from the same exact background that Johnny is. And so he ends up taking him home we'll take him to this next time we gather for church and take him into the home and baptizing him. And so within a couple of months, got to see this young man go from, yeah, my girlfriend, I'm gonna meet with you just because I want to get on her good side, to getting baptized, to sharing with his family, and then seeing his friend get baptized.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, the crazy stories. So thanks for giving me the juice, Mark. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many things that stick out on that story. The first one that just hit me, I was getting goosebumps. I tear up easy, so I almost teared up. But like when what he said about the story, it's like that's what this is. It's like so like I didn't know what you were gonna say. He would like, is he like gonna think it's like something negative, right? And then when I realized
Right.
that he was summing up the magnitude of all of this, the meta story of all of creation, the most amazing picture of Jesus. That's what this is. It's
That's
like
what this is. Yeah.
it's
Right.
funny. Yeah, it's like funny. It's beautiful. It's smart. It's like a um. I haven't thought about that story like that either. The story, the thief on the cross. That's what this. Yes, like Jesus. That's amazing. And then he goes and reaches his family, and unsurprisingly, you force him to tell the story. Do the training, which is like part of the, I don't know, one of the central tenets, right? You're training somebody else to do the work. Not everyone coming back to Mark.
Yeah. And then just to be fully transparent, I mean, so then from there, I worked with him to help him start a simple church. We started to gather. He was into pickleball. So we started saying, hey, invite your friends. I could pull up a pic with him and like 6 or 7 other friends, started to gather with them, play pickleball. We're reading Bible stories. But then all that fell apart. And then he broke up with the girlfriend and he disappeared for a while. He's come back around and he's on fire for Jesus again. And he's actually starting to share. And even recently, we just had a disciple making training this last weekend. He showed up for that. He was on fire. He was really engaged. And so that's what I've found is these stories, some of them make a great snapshot moment, but usually there's dips after that, huge dip in his life. But he is coming back around and he's on fire. And sometimes that'll happen where they'll disappear, but then they come back and he's now back in it, making disciples. And he's got a couple of guys he went away from that saying like, I'm going to share this, I'm going to share that with them.
Hey, if you're a Christian, you want your life to count, you want to start making disciples, give us a like and click subscribe for more.